So what gives you? I mean, I gave you a heads up. What gives you hope for the future?
I have given this some thought since you gave me the prompt, and so I'm going to answer it in two different ways. So one, I want to go on a business tangent,
Absolutely.
and I go back to moving out here in 2003 and just having a real struggle with the setup of the company, the people that were working there, the and it wasn't they were bad people. I don't want that's not what I'm getting at. It's just that it was a little bit of an older management team, and knowing that it was good, right, in a challenging way, that okay, I've got to find replacements, but it was exciting as well, you know, finding folks to come in who were going to be, good team members, want to have those common goals and so forth. And so when you think about companies transitioning, a lot of the battles we had to go through, and it was, the first couple of years, I'll tell you, it was like, is the company going to make it? Because there were a lot of things that kind of came at us at one time that were not necessarily in our control. And how do you get past those?
Right.
It's kind of, every now and then I joke and I say head down, pencil and paper, right? It's like just kind of plow through. Um, so I have a lot of hope for the company because there are some awesome people that work there, and we've done a good job of bringing in people that have common philosophies, work ethic. I think that's one thing that I've really appreciated about folks from Maine is they're like the Midwest folks.
Right.
A very good work ethic, a sense of camaraderie, picking yourself up when you get knocked down and saying, all right, well, that didn't work. We're gonna try this time. And so from a company perspective, I worried that if I got hit by a truck tomorrow, what's the company going to do? Because there were a lot of things that were evolving, that had my fingerprints all over it, and I have a lot more hope and faith and good thoughts about the company going forward, knowing that there's a great team of people there that can carry this thing forward. Or I'm going to be gone for a week. I don't have to worry about what's going on back at the shop because I know people have my back.
Let me ask you
Sure.
the the main Midwest work ethic thing. Where do you think that comes from? What do you think?
So I know out in the Midwest, a lot of farms. So I think it's just instilled. It's an expectation, at least from where I grew up, and and we didn't have a lot of money growing up as a family. We didn't. I wasn't worried about where my next meal was going
Right.
to come
Right.
from, but
Right.
so I think that a lot of life lessons in work ethic instilled at a young age, and I just look at whether the dairy farms, the farms, the lobster, all of that, growing up in those families. I mean, those, I think it's just part of who you are and part of the culture of growing up and knowing those expectations and not being afraid to work. You're not being afraid to put in a hard day's work.
I think there's something too about growing up in a cold climate.
Yeah.
You
I hadn't thought about it, but I think that.
you got to go out and shovel your car off. If that's what has to happen to get to work, it's what I have to do. So every day you kind of know a little bit. You're constantly reminded that I have to put in the work to get a result, right? And it makes you, contrasted to like Southern California or something,
Sure.
where it's every day's beautiful. Like just that from a young age. I gotta shovel my driveway. I gotta do. I think that something about that makes you a little harder too.
Sure.
Yeah. Just what I
No,
was
I
thinking
think
about.
that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah. Okay, your second part of this.
Oh, so I guess just hope for humanity. Maybe that's the other tangent. I will confess that I was talking with my wife Amy about this. I said, "But Ben's put a prompt out there." I said it's intriguing, and so we're kind of bantering it about a little bit, and thinking about when we grew up, and now looking at our generation of children, in that, late teens, early 20s, kind of group, they seem to be much more tolerant of people. Tolerant of, let's say, beliefs, gender, and all those things. You think about,
Yeah.
30 years ago, and even 30 years before that, of just where things have evolved, and will that somehow lend itself to the leaders of countries and how people get along, or even within our own country of how people get along. There's been this dynamic that has changed, and again, not to get off on a political tangent, but whether you're left, right, or in the middle, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consensus building and
Right.
getting along.
Right.
And so when you think about, or as we think about it, as my wife and I were just talking about it, where this age group, and maybe we're in our own little bubble, and see our kids and who their friends are and so forth, but I think it's broader than that, that there is a little more tolerance there. I guess I'm hopeful that there is, based on what I see, and how that would evolve in just the culture and people trying to get along. But then you look at what we see on the news today of people on airplanes getting into fist fights and the bickering going on in government's always going to have some
Right.
back and forth, but I have hope in that sense, that okay, as these younger people kind of continue on their way, and they're more tolerant of that, there's not that stigma with certain things that may be helpful, because then they're truly seeing people for who they are,
Right.
and not so much worried about, okay, well, you think that way, or you are behaving in this way, that they're just more tolerant of that going forward.
And they're because of technology, they're exposed to more different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I do think technology too amplifies what we're seeing. We see somebody on a plane. Well, 20 years ago you wouldn't see that because there wasn't a phone to record that. And I gotta think that those are more the outliers than the majority. I think that's a great point you make. I've challenged myself to come up with a new one every time I do one of these podcasts, and it's getting harder. But I was thinking today that, and I was struggling trying to come up with something. I even asked Dee, and she's giving me my father's answer. I'm like, I can't use that one. But I was thinking that, like, growing up, the news was always on in the house during the day or night, or what. At some point we'd watch the news, morning news, evening news, and we'd learn about the country or whatever. And being an educated citizen, it always felt like a thing that my parents wanted to do and I wanted to do. And I'd say it's about pre-COVID, probably 2 or 3 years ago, Dee and I just were like, we just kind of stopped. Like, I don't need the negativity that I see every night. And we kind of just separated ourselves from it. And I was thinking that, their ratings across the board, I think, are going down quite a bit. And I got to think that people are just sick of, I've heard it described as fear porn, or the people are trying to, there's a push politically. I think people feel whatever the other side, whatever news channel you're, it's a watered down kind of talking heads kind of thing, and I think people want other news sources, and I think there's a want for kind of the truth, just the truth, and I think and so my hope for the future in this regard is that that maybe we'll swing the other way. Maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to come out with a news channel where we're just going to try to play it as, just give you the facts as much as we can, or the internet and podcasting and sources that you can see, you can find the information yourself. You have more access to the information. So I'm hopeful that coming back together happens because of the extremes, because of everything getting so. It's just, I know for my general mental health, shutting off the news was the best thing, the best choice, and even social media, getting off that as much as I could.
I'll watch, especially on the weekends in the morning. Well, I could watch the local stuff, just to
Yes.
see what's going on in Maine and so forth. But it's the national, yeah, shut it down. I don't. I'm not a regular tuning in type person.
Right.
In that vein, and I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, well, my father's. I asked my dad this question, and he started going on all these negative things. I'm like, Dad, I asked you hope for the future. He's like, what are you doing? You're killing me. But his overall point was that everything swung so far that if you look at history, it has to come back together. It has. I'm like, okay, you tied it in together. I was getting nervous there.